Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Monday Morning Analyst, and I am Luke Thomas here on this Monday, January 16th, 2017. Thank you so much for joining me. As you guys know, 3 parts to this podcast. We talk about an overview of what happened, take a look at something with a little bit of slides in the second segment, and then the third segment, we take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. This week, we'll take a look at Invicta 21 and, of course, UFC Fight Night 103 from last evening. Had very little time to rest in between that and this. So thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, again, 2 events, Invicta and UFC. We'll start with the UFC. That's the bigger one. UFC, Fight Night 103 took place at the Talking Stick Resort Arena in Phoenix, Arizona for an attendance of 11,589 with a gate of $900 and basically $14,000. Pretty good gate, all things considered. Okay, so here we go. In the main event, Yair Rodriguez defeating BJ Penn via front kick and punches, 24 seconds of the second round. There's a lot to say about this. Not exactly sure where to start, except I guess where we can. I think in retrospect, we can all agree this was a fight that did not need to happen. Whatever happened to him, Penn, at the end of the Edgar fight was enough. I think you could probably argue the UFC bears some responsibility in helping to avoid this disaster. Although who knows what BJ said to them and who knows what kind of calculus they made. In the end, I will say gruesomely, this probably did help Yair Rodriguez's star power, right? I mean, I say that not as a great thing overall. Like, I'd rather there be a way I'd rather Rodriguez be a star more slowly if it meant not having to feast on BJ the way that he did. But if I'm just being a realist in the real world, there probably is some truth to that. How did he do it? Man, BJ Penn never really ever got out of first gear. I thought after the first, not exchange exactly, but the first time he had him up against the fence, he didn't even change levels for a double against the fence. That whizzer that Rodriguez had was so tight, BJ couldn't do anything. And from there, you just saw him open up and open up and open up and open up. And I mentioned this before. Like, I talked to Jason Perillo before the fight, his coach, and they thought that the risk-taking wildness of Rodriguez is a function of inexperience, and that still might be true, right? It may not just merely be a style preference. It may be a function of the fact that the guy hasn't fought really good guys and hasn't had to pay for that yet. We'll see if that's true. I don't think that's manifestly false because BJ didn't prove it wrong. I don't know what you can say about the level of fighter BJ is now. Like, is that the easiest fight that Rodriguez has had? Maybe in the UFC, like, even if you didn't put him away in the first round, it's only because BJ was just sort of hanging around. I hate to say this, but a fighter who is done, who does not need to compete anymore, who is shot, one of the telltale signs is that they don't ever throw back in a fight. They're reluctant to throw. They just can't bring themselves to do it. And you saw that last night. He just didn't throw much, unfortunately. I don't know what to say about that. I'm hearing that he did have a rejuvenating experience at Jackson Wink, but that was last year, and that more recently, including even before the Manila fight, it's not clear how much he was training at Jackson's. So I don't know if he returned to being the old BJ, if there is such a thing as a new BJ anymore. But it's not clear that like the Jackson thing didn't work out, because I was mentioning, I thought Arlovsky was pretty good proof that like you can be rehabilitated at Jackson's, and people are like, well, he fights at heavyweight. That's true. I mean, no doubt that heavyweight plays a factor there, but it's also clear to me that like Arlovsky didn't stray from the formula. Like, there was a path through Jackson Wink to get somewhere, and he stuck to that, and that has worked out for him. He didn't regain title gold, but he certainly rejuvenated his career in a major way. So there's that. Penn, it appears, may have strayed from that path, after one small experience with the Jackson Wink camp. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah, that was really horrible to watch. I didn't take hardly any pleasure in it. Some people were complaining about the stoppage. I thought the stoppage was a little late, but not really. I think some of that is sentimentality affecting people's vision of what happened there. Penn was squaring his hips for a lot of that. Again, I'm not saying you couldn't have stopped it earlier, but like that it was super late, I don't necessarily agree with. So take that for what it's worth. What did we learn about Yair? His style is quite dynamic, as we already knew. I frankly don't feel like we learned a lot, except you could see the speed difference. Jeez, the speed difference was out of control because he was able to not really move quickly side to side and in and out and in the course of different kicks, but his hand speed was quick, right? His kicking speed was quick. Everything about it, like they were just operating on two different athletic wavelengths. And BJ Penn was always a really good athlete, but he's 37, and who knows what all the drinking and partying has done to him in the course of that. So it was just hard to watch. It was really, really hard to watch. For those of us who were around when BJ was like the king, this is a reminder that the fight game, it doesn't really devour its elderly. It gives its elderly to the young to be devoured. This, again, the thing I mentioned off the top, I think this will help Yair Rodriguez's star power. It will. I'm not saying it's going to make him a star overnight, but this is one of those building block fights that will, in terms of star making, that will put him there. And that's a horrible reality to face, and it's ugly and it's uncomfortable, and none of us like it. I grant you that, but it's the world we live in, unfortunately. And so there's that. So that was really quite miserable, but a good win for Yair, I suppose. Just a reminder of the fight game and how people not only get old, but the game itself adapts. And yeah. Oof. Joe Lauzon defeating Marcin Held via split decision. 2 29-28, and then 1 30-27 for Held. I had it 29-28 for Held. I had him winning the second and the third. I really thought that those elbows that Joe Lauzon threw in the first, those were really just incredible. You can tell Joe Lauzon, he hit those cleanly from the first to whatever the last one was. So I really enjoyed that from him, and you can tell it's a technique that he's quite good at. It just looked to me like Held was also a little bit quicker than Joe. Joe better on the feet for sure. Landing more damaging shots, especially in that first. But Held is a decent wrestler, and he's got really great submission defense. There were times when Joe Lauzon was chaining submissions together, and he was setting traps, and you could see that Held knew what the traps were, so he would kind of put one foot in the trap, not all the way, to get it to diffuse the bomb, so to speak. Like very, very clever submission defense, from Marcin Held. Marcin Held was sort of like, oh, he's a leg lock guy. And he is a leg lock guy. He'll go for those kinds of things. But he's got a pretty decent, well-rounded game. He stays out of trouble for the most part striking. I mean, he got chewed up by those elbows. But you notice, like, he's either all the way out or all the way in when he strikes. He's got great timing on his takedowns. He can turn the corner. He can run the pipe on a single. He's the timing on it. The shot is quick. It's athletic. He's got good submission defense. He can take the back. There was a time when Joe Lauzon had his back taken and was trying to put his hands down, stand, and turn. Do you guys remember that? And did you notice what Held was doing to keep him there? He was putting his insteps in the back of Joe Lauzon's legs. A lot of times, you go back and watch the Meow Brothers, right? What they'll do is hit the berimbolo, and there's all different kinds of ways you can hit the berimbolo, or you can get behind a guy. A lot of different ways is when you get behind a guy in jiu-jitsu, you can grab onto their belt, and you put your insteps in not their insteps, but like your shin instep into the back of their legs, and you kick out, and then they'll sit right down, and you can put your hooks in. He kept doing that, and so he kept flattening Joe when Joe was trying to sit and turn. Marcin Held's a complete grappler, man. He's a complete grappler, and you heard Joe Lauzon talk about it. And by the way, Joe Lauzon, what a pro this guy is, huh? How about he wins a fight, then feels like he doesn't win, and you can even make a case that he did win. Even 29-28, you can make a case he won 2 of those 3 rounds. I didn't think so, but you can make a case anyway. But the point being is he has the honesty and the integrity to get up there and say, I don't think I won that. I think Marcin did, and I was really impressed by what he was able to accomplish. What a pro Joe Lauzon is. And it's not a fight he looked bad in. He looked good in that fight. Both guys looked good in that fight. It was a great fight, great co-main event, great matchup, and proof that Held fight against Diego Sanchez, I really think that altitude got to him. And in this particular case, it didn't. It's unfortunate that Held had started his career here in the UFC at 0-2, but I really hope hold on to him. The kid's 24 years old, man. Let's see what he can do, Ben Saunders defeating Court McGee 29-28 across the board. This was another one where I thought Court McGee took it, especially late in that third. I mean, I realized they judge it round by round, but I kind of thought that he had done enough. Ben Saunders was able to lock up some of the various, and I don't know enough about the 10th plant system to really comment on it effectively, some sort of like arm in, not triangle exactly, but sort of a triangle style of control where you can set things up for a submission if people aren't slippery and don't know what they're doing. But he was slippery, and Court McGee had really disciplined control on the inside to not let his elbows get out and put his hands on the mat, things like that. So Ben Saunders' attempts there were neutralized. I thought Court McGee did he wasn't doing all that great at distance, but he was defensively responsible at distance. It's that when he tries to attack it and then follow up, and he was throwing strikes in combination, his hands come down and they stay down. They don't come back up. So he was not necessarily super effective at range with Ben Saunders, who was just kicking, but at least he wasn't getting he was not easily countered there. It's when he drops hands to engage and then stays with the engagement. Oh, one, an uppercut, a hook, whatever he's throwing, and the hands stay down. And you saw Ben Saunders have some success there. Also strong in the clinch too. Unfortunate for Court McGee, who I feel like has lost a bunch. I want to say more recently. He goes up and down. Yeah. In any event, moving on. Sergio Pettis defeating John Moraga. Really masterful performance at distance. He wins 229-28 and 130-27. Moraga, especially in that first round, getting dropped, rocked. Sergio Pettis getting bigger, getting stronger. I mentioned this on my personal recap on YouTube on my own channel last night. The only thing that worries me is that Pettis is 8 fights in the UFC. 7 have been to the third round. Now, that's a lot of time to develop a guy, and that's a good thing. He's got 6 wins. He's not doing poorly. This is great. This is a definite upside. But I wonder if we're getting to a territory where he's having a little bit too much ring time and we're putting some miles on him. There's a balance you got to get, and it's not clear that he's got the right one. I guess we'll see how things go. But he's getting better. He's getting stronger. He's getting more dominant, and it's great progress from Sergio Pettis. Great win. John Moraga's a quality opponent. We move to the preliminary card. Drakkar Klose beats Devin Powell, 30-27 across the board. Devin Powell apparently was from the Dana White show, which I don't watch, but he did not have a great showing. Klose really put it on him, just dominating him in the clinch. There was a difference between the two physically, and as a consequence, Powell, who needed to establish distance, just couldn't physically get the guy off of him. And so you could see Klose had a really nice win there. Augusto Mendes, Tanquinho defeating Frankie Saenz. Split decision, very close fight, 28-29, then 229-28 for Tanquinho. Tanquinho is a legit world champion in jiu-jitsu, in the gi and outside of it. That is a high-level black belt. And you can see this is a guy who has been training wrestling in jiu-jitsu for a long time, because he had really respectable takedowns, both on the movement themselves and the timing of it and the athleticism of it. This is a guy who's been doing his homework. His striking is a work in progress, no doubt about it. But this is not with some BJJ guy who needs to pull guard and needs a sleeve and a lapel to do something. No, sir. He can take you down, and he's got a great style for MMA anyway. Good to see him get the win. Alexey Oleynik defeating Viktor Pesta via Ezekiel choke at 257 of the first round. We'll talk more about the Ezekiel, how it's done in the second segment. I want to make a comment about this because a lot of people are like, what are you saying this for? You have to respect a submission. If a submission is locked in, I don't care if it's a 10-year-old child, although a 10-year-old kid can't do it, but like some 16-year-old kid who doesn't know what they're doing, and I don't care if it's some weird submission variety. If it is locked in, you have to respect it. And that's the first thing you have to just always acknowledge. It's like, look, is Oleynik a better grappler than Demi and Maia? Not even in the same universe. No chance. But if a submission is locked in, you have to respect it. And, of course, Viktor Pesta did, and he ultimately tapped. I just want to make a point about that. Second thing I want to say, this is a low percentage submission. It's something that they teach, like they teach triangles and arm bars and kimuras from white belt, but this is something that fades out over time. You'll get, especially with the gi, you'll get some specialists who have really nasty Ezekiel chokes, but the truth is the higher you go up in the food chain, the less that thing kind of works. People's defenses are better. People's just defensive responsibility, which is two different things, right? If someone locks in the Ezekiel choke, you can, if typically they're in mount, you can buck them, put a hand through, and then close the elbow, and that closes off the choke. Or people just never let their head get wrapped. We always talk about never let your head get wrapped, either on the ground for a crossface or on the standing. Someone like Ronda Rousey or anyone else will just toss you into oblivion. So getting your head wrapped, getting your neck controlled is always a bad thing. And so I made a point last night that, like, there's a reason why you've never seen an Ezekiel choke finish in the UFC. One is because we don't wear gis. I think you would see more if we had some gis. But the other part is that it's a low percentage submission. Like, you're never going to see someone like Tanquinho get caught with an Ezekiel choke in MMA. If he gets rocked, maybe. It's highly unlikely. Yes, those chokes can work. And yes, guys can develop them in ways where they get really good at them and they can be sneaky with them. And you'll see he's very, very sneaky with it. So it's a good job by Alexey Oleynik. But, there's a reason why there's been one omoplata finish and there's been one Ezekiel finish in the UFC. It's because they don't work on elite fighters. They don't work on elite grapplers. Now, that doesn't mean basic chokes don't work. They do. And again, there's all different kinds of varieties with the Ezekiel arm in from the back. The traditional one is you're taught it while you are mounted on someone. Wrap the head, grab it over, come over. We'll look at that in the second segment. But, I mentioned this last night. Roger Gracie has won tournaments, taking guys down, sweeping them, or pulling guard, sweeping them, going to mount and winning cross choke, which is a very basic choke. Right? It's not that basic chokes can't work, or that even in this particular case, more of a gimmicky one. Right? They can. And especially if you specialize in it, they can be good. You have to respect the submission, even if it's a little bit gimmicky. But no one is going to say Oleynik is like some super awesome grappler generally. He's got a really wicked Ezekiel choke. My only point being is, why have you never seen Demian Maia go for one? Why have you never seen Demian Maia or someone else like Jacare caught with one? I mean, you might have seen it in a gi tournament, but not in a no-gi one. Because they don't work on guys who are super, super good. They just don't. Or almost never. I shouldn't say they don't. Almost never. But they can be armbarred, and they can be Kimura, and they can be footlocked and heel hooked. Those are higher percentage submissions. They work more often. There are more entries to them. The defense is harder for them. There's different transitions into them. They're longer limbs. Getting a throat can be hard. Rear naked chokes work, but that's because you have control of the whole back, right? An Ezekiel choke is tough. Catching someone while you're mounted, which is part of the scam. That's what he's doing there. That's why it's sneaky. He's giving you the mount. You'll see. Still, if you get submitted while you're mounted on someone with a no-gi Ezekiel choke, there's only two possibilities there. One, or maybe both, you didn't do your homework, or two, you're probably not super elite as a grappler. Because even an elite grappler would know that there's a defense to that they could break. It'd just be hard to get those guys. It'd just be hard. So just keep that in mind. Like, I'm not saying that submission is, it's trash. No. He's gotten 8 guys with it. Clearly he's good at it. Clearly he's catching it. But it's a low percentage submission. If you're getting omoplated in the UFC, I'm going to say your ground game's probably not that great for the UFC level. Might be able to beat the hell out of me. Might be able to beat the hell out of the average guy on the street. Might be able to beat the hell out of you. I don't know. I don't know who's watching. But if you're an elite fighter and you're an elite grappler, you should never get caught with things like that. Never. And you might be like, well, Luke, that's just your opinion. Nope. I've had this very discussion, not so much about Ezekiel chokes, but about like gimmicky submissions or what it means to get caught at an elite level. Again, you'll go and watch the Worlds in May with the gi. Watch no-gi Worlds this next year coming up too. What kind of submissions will you see? You'll see commonly, if you do see a submission, a lot of these are points wins, but if you do see it, you'll see a bow and arrow choke because you have 2 limbs plus a lapel. It's just hard to guard everything. There's a lot of transitions in to the bow and arrow. You can see that kind of thing. That's a little bit more common. Go back and watch the no-gi Worlds. What will you see? You'll see, toe holds. A lot of toe holds you'll see, right? Chokes you'll see to an extent too, even though those are really hard to get as well. But these are more common because they require, if you have someone's back, that's such a dominant form of control that even someone good can have difficulty fending it off. And the legs, the entanglements can get so complicated that the defense, keeping it up over the course of a fight or a match, can be hard to do. So you have to respect the submission. You have to respect the fact that Oleynik has got this on a number of guys over a number of years in MMA. You have to respect that it is definitely an orthodox technique. But I think you also have to acknowledge that either Pesta didn't do his homework or there's a question generally about what kind of guy gets caught in a submission like this. I know he caught Adlong Amagov, but Amagov, he caught him years ago, and he's not even a heavyweight. He's much, much smaller. Most of the guys he's caught in this have not been anything close to what I would call elite competition. So just keep that in mind. That there's a reason why these don't appear very often. It's not because guys don't go for them as often. I mean, they don't, but they don't because they don't work all that well on people who are good. It's harder. It's much harder. It's much harder to catch an elite fighter in a no-gi Ezekiel than it is a heel hook. Much harder. Tony Martin defeating Alex White, 30-27 across the board. Just sort of a dominating grappling performance. Nina Ansaroff defeating Jocelyn Jones-Lybarker via rear naked choke at 3:39 of the third round. Had a bit of a tough fight in that first round. She was getting chewed up on the right-hand side, but once she got on the ground, you could see she was just a dominant grappler, transitioning, able to get her feet crossed underneath from mount, so that when Lybarger turned, the back was super tightly controlled. And yes, she was high at times, and Lybarger should have just shucked her off. Dana Cormier was giving great instruction at that time, but nevertheless was able to hold on to it. Did a really great job, really strong job from her. Let's see. Walt Harris defeating Chase Sherman. Walt Harris looking much better this time around. I think he came to the big leagues a little early, and you're starting to see him mature a little bit, and we'll see where he goes from here. Chase Sherman, by the way, has been tuned up by sharp punches from both Walt Harris and prior to that, Justin Ledette. I am sure Chase Sherman is a very talented guy, but if you give him some linear boxing, he has problems with it. Joaquin Christensen defeating Bohan Mihalovic at 2:05 of the third round, and then Cyril Asker smoking Dmitry Smolyakov at 2:41 of the first round. Your fight of the night was Tanquinho versus Frankie Saenz. Performance of the night, Yair Rodriguez taking on Yair Rodriguez and Alexey Oleynik. So credit to those guys. Very, very quickly, Invicta FC 21. This was a great card. This was really, really enjoyable. In the main event, Megan Anderson, this took place at the Scottish Rite Temple in Kansas City, Missouri. Aired on Fight Pass for free. Megan Anderson defeating Charmaine Tweet at 2:05 of the second round. Megan Anderson, let's talk about the good and the bad here. She's clearly the next big thing at women's featherweight. She's strong, she's athletic, she's big. Here's the good thing you can say about her. There's a lot of good things. Like I said, all those things. Athletic, strong, she can muscle opposition. That's good. Good pressure moving forward. If she can find you at the end of her punches, she has brutal combinations. She hits hard, and she can just uncork left, right, up, down, kick, punch, uppercut. She just has such a command and such great finishing instincts that there's a lot to like there. If there's a knock on her in her development, it's that she's still really hittable. She gets hit a little bit too much for me. And you think about a fight against Cyborg, that does not bode well for her. And I think also the athletic speed of Cyborg might be a problem. I don't think Megan Anderson Megan Anderson is slow by any stretch of the imagination. She is athletic, but I don't know that athleticism is necessarily explosive speed. And someone like Cyborg might have a little bit of an advantage with that. We'll see if that even matters against someone like Duran Demi, or who's also pretty fast, and Holm, who has good timing. I don't know how fast she is. But just something to keep in mind. A little bit hittable, but when she hits like a Mack truck. Raquel Paolui defeating Pani Kianzad, rear naked choke, 3:40 of the first round. Sort of a clinical performance there. Leah Letson defeating Elizabeth Phillips. Elizabeth Phillips was the one who I believe had the Reebok malfunction on the gear. At 1:18 of the first round with the head kick. Flashed the hands. Her hands came down. Whack, up came the head kick. Brilliant stuff from her. Aspen Ladd defeating Sajara Eubanks. Sajara trains out of Team Lloyd Irvin, not too far from here, via unanimous decision. 2 30-27s and 1 29-28. Aspen Ladd just doing a little bit more. I didn't think there was a big difference between the two technically. And Eubanks is great on the ground, which I thought she should have exploited much earlier. Like, she's a decorated international level competitor in jiu-jitsu, but what are you going to do? Andrea Lee just torching Jenny Liu 114 of the first round. Hit her with a liver shot with a knee. You see Lou going for like spinning back elbows and spinning back fists. Lee waits her chance and just digs a vicious liver shot and drops her there. Strong performance for KGB. Then there's Amy Montenegro taking on Celine Haga. 29-28, she wins. This has to be challenged. Celine Haga choked Montenegro unconscious such that when the final bell rang, they had to wake up Montenegro. That, according to Big John McCarthy, means that Haga is the rightful winner. Now, this is a commission that did the right thing when Anna Kunitskaya got the wrongful win over Tanya Evinger when Evinger put her face for a foot on the face for a submission defense, and then the referee, like Mike England, was like, "You can't do that. You can do that," and so they called it a no contest. That'll be Invicta 22. But Montenegro did a really good job in this fight. Was clearly the better athlete. Was better on the feet, and you could see that Haga has some ability as a grappler. Her athleticism works better in those contexts. She's long, she's lankier, although she had a decent hook kick too. But she almost had her with an arm triangle in that. I think that first round, she got dominated throughout the rest of the fight. At the end, reverses and gets this rear naked choke with no hooks in. But like I said, you got to respect a choke, man. If a choke is tight, it doesn't matter if it's both hooks in, if it's super technical. If a choke is tight, you have to respect it. She couldn't get out of it, and she goes to sleep. Bell rings. They have to wake her up. Celine Haga got robbed. That is absolutely her fight to win. And then Christine Ferreira taking on Rachel Ostovich. Ostovich has a new last name. I can't remember it. At 129 of the third round. Another head kick KO, at least a head kick that set up the eventual TKO from the debuting Christine Ferreira. So great job by her. Okay, enough of that. Let's do this. Let's take a look at the Ezekiel choke, what it is. I know a lot of people had some questions about it, how it's set up, and then we'll take a look at how Alexey Oleynik did it in the next segment. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the Ezekiel choke. Now, what is it? Well, it's a choke. It's a choke where typically it's taught in the gi. As you can see, I've got my 93 brand gi on. This is an A5. I don't really wear this anymore because even on my giant arms, you can see it goes kind of a little bit further than I'd like. So if you're grip fighting, after a while, it winds up getting down here. And I don't really like it. So I don't wear it very much, but it is a great gi. Shout outs to Mirakatsu, who did the design here. In any event, neither here nor there. What is an Ezekiel choke? Typically how it's taught is, it's taught from I mentioned before, from a white belt level. Many chokes are, but this is the one that sort of fades over time because it's a low percentage for the most part, although some guys can get good at it, especially in the gi. It's really a gi choke for the most part. Alexey Oleynik has figured out a way to make it work in MMA, but I don't know how replicable at scale it is. Partly that may be his own dexterity or his own wherewithal that makes that work, but this is essentially it. What's going to happen is, you can see my hands are a disaster. I'll do it this way so it's not so awful. You take your hand and inside the sleeve you grab, but you don't merely just grab like with your fingers. You kind of roll your hand in there. You get a nice chunk of the sleeve. And then this hand, the grabbing hand, this one will be underneath the head of someone. You grab it and then you slide it in front. Now a lot of guys, you don't want to slide it in front of their face because they can grab it. You kind of just take it, you roll your hands in there, and then you kind of just scoot it on the inside. So what happens is, I've got this grip, and then the blade of this hand, or like this part, depending on what you want to get, right? You just squeeze out. You do this. I'm trying to show you here, right? And so what ends up happening, almost like you're scissoring someone's neck. Now it's not quite a scissor because you don't actually go that far. And the hand underneath the head, I'm scooping the head, right? The neck is looking at me here. I gotta get a better setup for this. The neck is looking at me here. I just go over the head and like that. You can't. It's not quite a direct scissor, but it's something like that. And some guys will choke with this part. Some guys will choke with like the divot here, and some will choke with a straight up forearm. It just depends. Depends how you're taught. But that's where the choke comes from. And there's other varieties of this too. There's an arm in Ezekiel. There's an Ezekiel from the back where you actually grab the lapel and then come over with your hand in the same kind of way, almost the same kind of motion. But it's not exactly like a traditional Ezekiel. But it's traditionally taught when you're in mount, you do it to the person underneath. Scoop the head, grab the sleeve, and then you come over the top, and then you gut them out. This one's a little bit different, and most of these defenses that are involved in the Ezekiel, if you're getting caught in it, especially if you're getting caught in mount, is to bump and then squeeze an arm through, and then wrap them, right? So if they want this, and you can get an arm through it does this to them, so there's no choke, right? You need the arm to be here, right? You need to have this, this, or this, depending on which one you want to choke with. You need to have that on the throat. So if this gets pulled, there's no choke, right? You get the idea. So you kind of have to be like elbows. It's not flared exactly. You can do it straight, but it's a little bit of flaring, especially because this one that's underneath the head, you can see it's at a right angle. I'm looking face to face, right? This is where I'm looking. I'm going to grab this way and then come over the top like that, and then, or, scoot underneath. Some people do this with their hand. Some people do this with their hand. Some people do a straight hand. It just depends what kind of variety you get taught. Like a lot of chokes, there's different varieties. But that's basically how an Ezekiel choke works. And it's different with positions where you can lock it in and slide and then do it over. It really depends on preference. It depends on what you think might work. Obviously, you want a whole position with the mount, which involves a whole other amount of details. Hydra Gracie is really good at this. So he's got a bunch of videos on how to hold mount while doing Ezekiel. So, there's a lot. You can just check them out. But that's basically what an Ezekiel choke is. It's like you grab the inside of the sleeve, you roll the knuckles deep, and then you go. Everything, though, like everything else, depends on the setup. It depends on the person. It depends on whatever else. So let's take a look at the slides. Now that we've seen what a gi Ezekiel choke is, let's take a look at the slides and then talk about how Alexey Oleynik was able to get it on Viktor Pesta last night. Let's take a look. So now that we have a basic idea, and I do emphasize basic, like I encourage you to go research about the Ezekiel choke, but we have a basic idea of what the Ezekiel choke is. Here we are last night with Oleynik and Pesta, okay? What you're going to notice is that Oleynik really likes to wrap the head. Wrap the head. Now, how many times have we talked about wrapping the head and why it's a super bad idea? Why? Because on the ground you can get cross-faced. And if you're getting cross-faced, if someone's controlling your neck and then your hips, you basically can't move. They've got you controlled. On the head, it's not quite the same thing. You can still move your feet around, but you're definitely getting your body controlled, and you can get thrown from there. As you can see, you can get choked. That's the choking part is significantly less common, but you get the idea. Just when someone wraps your head, it's real bad. And I went back and I watched the fight. He tried to do this earlier in the fight. Here's 348. The submission doesn't come for a little while later. Watch what he does here. He brings his hand around, as you can see. He brings the right hand around. Pesta had an underhook and then turned him in, so he brings this around and wraps the head. Watch this other hand. It's going to come up to greet it. And you can see, here's how he does a no-gi MMA Ezekiel choke. He grabs his bicep like it's a rear naked choke. It's almost identical to this. It's just a bicep grip. When you rear naked choke, the hand that's choking grabs the bicep of the other arm. That's really how it works. You see, that's what he does here. Question is, can he get it standing? Look at that. That is a rear naked choke grip, if I've ever seen it. It's just Pesta is facing chest to chest, not turned around. Okay? So we keep going. Watch what he does here. He's going to try and slide this in on the side here. And Pesta sort of leans over. I don't know if he's realizing what's going on or not. Right? And you can see him. Look at him here. The hand before was sort of covering his face. He's trying to slide it in. There's the glove. He's trying to get it. He's got to get it way down below, though. And we'll go over how he does it when he actually tries. And he actually, you can see him, what he's going to do is, I can't tell if he gets taken down or he pulls guard here. But in any case, you see him go down. Now look at this, right? Still grabbing the bicep. That's a little bit deeper. You can't quite tell. Two hands on the mat. That's never a great idea if you're getting your head wrapped. But what happens is I don't think he was close. You can see him here. This is half guard, not actually mount. You can see him here. It's probably close, but he lets it go because, one, he gets punched in the face right here, and so he just sort of lets it go and he grabs inside control. All right, so that's the first part. It is half guard. So he tried it earlier, and he might have pulled guard like that. The video doesn't show it all that great, so just keep that in mind. That is a distinct possibility about what's happening here. But let's go to the finishing sequence if we can. Here he is inside control. Oleynik sort of stepping over to the side. You can do that to control people, especially if you want to re-guard. You can do it just to keep them from, passing, but even then they can still pass. I mean, they just have to slide their leg up and in, I should say, but you get the idea. It at least holds them in place and at least gives you a chance to re-guard, potentially, if that's what you want. And maybe he was doing this just to bait him, because what happens is Pesta takes mount, but there's no resistance. So here he is. He comes out to the side. You got elbows separated from the hip. Never really want that too much. And he comes and he takes it. And just keep watching here. You'll see. And eventually he gets it in and he stretches him out. You're like, well, I didn't see much there. Let's go back and look at this. There it is. This is the final look at it right here. You might be like, wow, I can't see a whole lot with this. Let's go back and take a look at it from the slow-mo replay, because that's where they get it really great. Here he is. He steps up, puts his knee to the side of the shoulder. I guess I'm not sure exactly what kind of pass he was going for, but he's on his live toes here. This is an easy mount to take. He's got his hands all the way up here. Look at all of his arms. There's nothing protecting the mount. He's giving the mount away, but he's got the head wrapped already. Okay? So what does he do? He comes to the side. There's no choke here, right? He brings his knee up, and this is not a great mount. Like, this is not, oh, what a super technical mount. Like, his knees, if it was more technical, I would say it would be closer to the belt line, but maybe you don't have to worry about that when a guy is literally not defending at all. I mean, look at the space between his elbows and his hips. There's just a mountain of space in between. So he goes and takes the mount. Look at that. Simple. But now he is putting himself into space for the choke. This is where I made a point previously about Viktor Pesta. Even if you want to give Oleynik all the credit in the world for being like super awesome with his sub, and it is dangerous, obviously, this is where Pesta should have done his homework a little bit. But okay, he didn't. At least not enough of it. So now I want you to pay attention. Watch this hand. Watch the left hand of Oleynik. This is what does all of the work. Because right now, what does he really have? He has a rear naked choke with no rear naked choke because it's not from the rear. Again, chest to chest. So what does he do? Now he brings it across his face. It looks to me like he's looking to his right as well to create a lane for it. So now what's he going to do? Now look closely. You can see all the UFC. It looks to me like he's going to tuck his wrist, and he's going to turn his wrist sort of where as he looks to the right, it'll face his palm. See that? He's going to face his palm a little bit, and he's going to use that, and I think he's looking to the right to create a lane here to slide. Now you can see. So now what he's doing is he's almost tucking it beneath, almost on top of his own neck, but I think that looking to the right is essential to create space, because if we go back and look here, he's looking straight up at the ceiling. And he begins to turn as he turns that inside. So now let's keep watching. Then he keeps going. He kind of buries it. Look how deep he gets it there. Right? But that's still not enough to get it. That's kind of on the side of someone's throat. Like the other side can choke as a squeeze, but it still has to be, this one still has to be deep enough. So what you're going to see is he's going to raise his elbow. Go back and look here real quick. Look at how the elbow is kind of centered across the back here. Hand goes in, gets further. Now watch this elbow start to come up. Why? Look at that. Look at the difference in the elbow space here. Down, elbow flares out. And it's going to go even further. Look at that. Why is he going to do that? Because if you think about it, and this is the hand that wraps around the head, of course. If you think about it, if you're just trying to create a lane and you're grabbing your bicep and your elbow is down, you can't get a whole lot on it. But if you raise your elbow of the digging hand, the one that's going to go on top of their throat, just do an experiment. Grab your own bicep, put that elbow of the arm that's being grabbed with your own bicep in the air, and then you'll see as you raise the elbow, you can slide it in. You can dig it, right? As this one here, you can't really dig it. Like, how far can you push it? There's nothing really to do. But as you flare it out, now you can drive it in. That's what he's doing here. And that's how he gets this tap. That's how he does it. He drives it here, and then you'll see Pesta taps a second later. This is the choke right here. So he just tricks guys. He wraps you up like this. He's looking straight up, whispering sweet nothings in your ear maybe. You're taking mount. You're not thinking anything of it. He is halfway here already. Then as you take mount, he says, okay, thank you very much. He is going to look away to create a lane to drive that hand in. And by the way, look, he does a really good job. A lot of guys, when they take Ezekiel, especially from mount, what they'll do is they'll wave the hand in front of the face, like as they're bringing it across, and people see that and they grab it, right? Here, he does a good job of looking away and then comes in on the side. Now, Pesta probably saw it, but it was a little bit too late by that point. So then here he is, boom, slides it in, looks away, drives it, and that's all she wrote. You're asking, what would the defense to this be? I'm assuming you have to push on this elbow. Again, most of the defenses I've ever been taught from this, This is a really tight squeeze here. Would be getting a hand in the middle, which you can do if someone is, scissoring out their hands, as I showed you previously. This one, there's no real scissor. It's just sort of like I don't know what kind of grip he has on his hands. I don't know if he's making a fist or whatever, but it's enough to cause obviously a significant amount of problem, and you can't get a hand in between. I'm guessing it's to either bail to let go of the mount and then push on the elbow, right, to break that. Because I don't know, you can't really hand fight here, and you can't really attack this elbow. So I'm guessing it would be to jump to side and then lean on that to break that elbow out. Because if the elbow gets too high, then of course the whole kinetic chain is broken there, or at least the whole I shouldn't say kinetic chain, the whole this is the weak link here, this open elbow. But still, that's a nifty little choke that's hard to pull off in the UFC. And you won't see too many of these. Very interesting job here by Alexey Oleynik. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. Bellator 170 is here. There's no UFC event next week. It's going to be the week after the UFC on Fox. So Bellator 170 is your entertainment next Saturday night. This will be at the Forum in Inglewood, California. In the main event, Tito Ortiz taking on Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen will make his his Bellator debut. Paul Daly returns against Muhammad Ali. Brennan Ward. Halleck Gracie will make his Bellator debut against Hisaki Kato. Georgi Karakanian taking on Emmanuel Sanchez. That's a good fight. And then Derek Campos taking on Derek Anderson. The Battle of the Derricks. Also on that preliminary card, Kevin Casey is on it. Chinzo Machida is on it. I'm trying to think who else might be. Colleen Schneider is on it. Rebecca Ruth is on it. There's a couple of interesting fights. Henry Corrales is on it. So pay attention to that as well. A couple of decent fights on that prelim card. That'll be on Spike, I believe, starting at 9 p.m. So there you go. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give it a like, share it around. If you have any questions, email me at luke.thomas@sbnation.com. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoy this MLK Day and the rest of your week. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do, at SBN Luke Thomas. And until next time, ladies and gents, enjoy the fights.